product is really very perishable. No, so again, without this value add that is necessary to ensure that the wastage that you speak of, right at the point where you are producing this particular food, it's not something that is unattainable. So why is it not attained if it's not unattainable? I mean...
Okay, fine. So like you said, perishable produce is actually where we have a lot of wastage. You talked about the fish. Fish is, once it gets out of the water,
that's it.
That's it. Yeah. So there's a lot of wastage there. And obviously you've had a lot of initiatives to have cold storage right at the point of, of fishing. Yes. But for fruits and vegetables, again, very perishable. If we don't have cold storage, the wastage at the farm is enormous. So obviously, like you say, there are a lot of interventions, on farm storage, yes. And also value addition, like transforming them into shelf-stable products.
Sauces,
thank you,
like
yes.
Or grind them.
Or grind them.
Yes.
I think you remember the governor of Makueni.
Yes.
And because wastage in mango has always been a big deal for mango producing regions, what did he do?
Turned it into juice?
Yes. So they have this big factory transforming the perishable mangoes into pulp, which they're actually exporting. And also right now mango is off season, so they're selling to those who make juice. So that is one way. But you see, that can be done in all other produce. We just need to, make this. That's what I'm saying. That's why we're here, to make the case for this thing, because we can do something. And the truth is we know what to do. We just need to do. That's what, when the governor of Makueni put up that factory, I think he knew that, this is what needs to be done. So, farmers now can take the mangoes there, they're processed into, this pulp, or dried, which is valuable, throughout the year while the mangoes are off season. So there are interventions, as my colleagues will say. There are a lot of interventions that can be done to minimize that kind of loss at the farm level.
So can you tell us some of those interventions? And I think that's where we ought to be going now in this conversation. Yeah. I think of a time gone by and where people who live by the water would fish, the same fish that we're talking about, but it would not go to waste because they would dry it. And they would use it for months. They would smoke the fish, they would dry the fish, sun-dry the fish, hang it up in their homes. They would do the same thing with meat. They would preserve vegetables in milk for days and it would become sour. Is it possible to do these things on a grander scale? And I think that's what we're looking at, because I'm still stuck on that 30 to 40%. That's a ridiculously high number in terms of food that's being lost. So what are some of these interventions that can actually happen, Dr. Terry?
Yeah, thank you, Do, for this question. Let me put it this way. There are technologies out there, but as you say, we are in an era that we are also facing our own challenges. And therefore, some of these traditionalist practices, somehow, we have to look for a way of scaling them or making them really move to the industrial space. And this is what we do at WRI. We work with small enterprises, small and medium enterprises, and we want them to upgrade the technologies so that whatever, in principle, is the same thing, but they apply, technologies that then will enable them produce products that they can take to the market, get, the produce out there in large scale and get, incomes out of it. You see, we have... As if we have to address food loss and waste, we really have to also connect with even national development goals. Today we speak of unemployment. SMEs are a pathway that would create jobs for many, many, many youths. And if you apply or you scale up or you twist a little bit some of those traditional technologies, then they become an avenue for even greater spin-offs in the economy.
Winnie, for you.
Yes, there's something I picked up from the discussion, and this is the social issues that we also need to address, because sometimes I feel as technical experts, we focus a lot on the technical component. So we have the technologies, we have the research, we have all these solutions. But what about the social cultural influences? I like what he mentioned about having the refrigerator and eating leftovers. But how many African men eat leftovers? Because I have interacted with a few who say they want fresh food every day. Hawataki chakula ya jana. They want a new meal every day. So, these are some of the things, and that is why we are having this International Day of Awareness, to really raise the awareness. And then we talk about things like drying. How many people know how to use dry tomatoes? How many people want to consume dry vegetables? So we also need to think about the consumer of all these things we are trying to promote at the production end, because these technologies are there. And if I can also introduce the whole idea of systems, because I'm a food systems analyst, I can't not introduce systems thinking. And that is what we are promoting in FAO. We are trying to link all these different nodes. Because when you talk of cold storage facilities and you talk of all these technologies, we can't really support them. And the reason some of them are not working so well is because of the energy. We need energy, we need clean energy, because all these processing plants, all these cold storage facilities, they need energy, whether it is solar energy or electricity energy. So when you look at the cost of investing in the processing, then we need to bring in different stakeholders, not just people who are involved in the agriculture sector. We need to bring in all these other sectors to support us to really ensure the success. I am waiting for that question.
Yeah, he's not going to let it go. So let's get it out now.
I mean, one is spoiled for choice. Whether it is NGOs, whether it is whoever it is, who keep talking about how it is green energy is aplenty in this country, and how we are number one on the continent and probably number one on the planet. You look around you, there's solar technology for desalination of water. Why? We have more sun than you know what to do with. And there are people who do these things. Now, when you talk linkage, you're talking a good language, which means you want to connect these available resources to this. I don't think it is the availability of the resources or the linkage that is a problem. It's the willingness. Because there are people who benefit from the status quo.
Yes.
True.
All these things that we're discussing, there are people who somehow benefit immensely from it. So if you change that ecosystem, that benefit will either diminish or disappear altogether. So they will not allow it.
Yes, and when we talk of systems thinking, there's one critical pillar that we call changing the incentive. So when you're changing a system that is working, even with the negative effects of that system, like you're saying, there are people that are benefiting from it
immensely.
But we need to identify the different incentives for the same people, because you can't do away with them. We still need to find a way to improve the sustainability of the agri-food system while ensuring, we are managing the trade-offs, which is not a very easy thing to do. It's a complex thing to do. And one of the things we are doing as FAO is supporting development of a strategy. And we hope that the strategy, yes.
How is it difficult to get rid of middlemen? Because if you look at many of the problems that we have, they are caused by middlemen.
Middlemen, you can also call them cartels.
Yes, they actually don't do anything except be in the middle, and they give it the impression they're important and they have to facilitate and they have to. Let me give an agricultural example. In a time gone by, in the previous century, when I myself personally was youthful, if you, yes, I was.
You're not youth at heart.
There was a time.
Look at me very carefully, okay, and tell me if you see youth anywhere. Anyway, the point is,
it might take a while. But let's say,
if you entered immigration and wanted a passport, there were throngs of people who did nothing useful except give you the impression they want to help you.
Yep.
This is a government office, and somehow the process of getting a passport was almost impossible if you did not engage these people. They no longer exist.
True that.
They don't exist. You simply walk to the counter, you ask what it is that you want. Same with the ID. They were always there. How are they gotten rid of? I'm simply saying that a great deal of the problems that we have are not systems. Systems work, but the problem is people. People are the ones who operationalize systems. Okay? The status quo is easy to deal with because change often involves tipping the apple cart and moving things in directions you may not particularly want to. And then also there's the question of resistance. Because this conversation, year in, year out, it's even strange. You have a situation where you have a part of the country that doesn't have food. And there's one where where cabbages are rotting in the farms. So you wonder, and it's the same country.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Farmers are pouring out milk.
Yep.
There's a part of the country where people have no idea what they're going to eat the next day.
True.
You wonder,
That day.
surely, is there a problem here? And of course, there's a problem. And then organizations like yours have to come in to give people who don't have the food, yet there is food in another part of the country.
But isn't this the thing? And we're going to go to a break in a minute. But isn't that the thing that then these linkages need to be set up so that these systems, where we're saying things that are being done at a micro level, need to be graduated to the point where there is an understanding across board that you have this thing in plenty. Can you dehydrate your milk and turn it into powder? Can you dry your vegetables and use them for storage later, that you can now supply them on a national scale where there is no food in the future? Can you dry your meat on a higher level? Can you desiccate your potatoes? Can you do things like that? And I think that's the question that we're asking. And can it actually be done from an expert's point of view? We'll come back after this break and look into that, shall we? Kenya's largest single-day athletics event is taking place on the 29th of October. Will you be there? It's the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. It's happening on the 29th of October. I want you to go to www.nairobimarathon.com. Register for the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. It's 2,000 shillings. Then we come out on the 29th and we do what? We run, otherwise known as walking fast. We'll do it. The Future Makers program is a benefactor of this program, and it's young people, especially girls and those with disability, gives them a chance to earn, learn and grow. It's happening on the 29th. It's a special one because it's the 20th edition. So let's come out and do that. And then employers also have an opportunity to celebrate themselves and their own via way of the Employer of the Year Awards. It's back this year. It's an initiative of the Federation of Kenya Employers, and it seeks to vet organizations that put people at the core of their business. So are you thinking that this is happening in the organization where you are? Get onto the website of www.fke-kenya.org and register your organization. The 6th of October at Safari Park Hotel is where these awards will take place this year. And any member who knows that this is something that they're doing is welcome. There are categories in leadership and governance, corporate performance and productivity, human resource practices and industrial relations across board, and you have a chance to take place in these this year. It's all supported by Safaricom, GIZ, ILO, BAT, NCBA and NITA. It's 26 minutes to 9 o'clock. Kenya's biggest conversation continues after this.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
When you're impeached, you're impeached. When you're sentenced, you're sentenced.
Madam Chief Justice,
Until the sentence is set aside.
Ukibeba vitu kwa roho utakufa. If you carry things in your heart, you will die.
The reason for which you went to school and then gathered experience, that reason must be paid for.
All right.
Oh, okay.
This level.
Shape up or ship out.
Levels don't change.
No.
Since I'm not shipping up.
You know my business partner here.
Shipping out.
Are we talking about the sheep in the bathtub? Or
Or the ship man.
Emmanuel Talabu used to tell us a story of they were in school and they've been told to write composition about a ship. His classmate raises a hand. Teacher, are you talking about a sheep or a sheep goat?
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, so we're looking at cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. 15 degrees, highs of 25 and lows of 14. And we'll see lows of 13 in a sunny Nakuru, going to highs of 25. It'll go to highs of 24 in a mostly cloudy Nyeri and highs of 24 as well in a sunny Eldoret. It's 25 and sunny in Mombasa. It'll go to highs of 30 and we'll see highs of 30 as well in a sunny Malindi at 25. 20 and sunny in Kisumu and 17 and sunny in Kakamega. 20 and partly sunny in Kampala, going to highs of 27. And we'll see highs of 30 in a sunny Dar es Salaam at 25. It's 7 and sunny in Johannesburg with highs of 21. And at 27, Lagos is clear, highs of 31. And we'll see highs of 35 in a cloudy Kinshasa at 25.
Online, mobile, and on radio. Twitter @SpiceFMKE.
Okay, what are we looking at here? Still some movement coming towards the Outer Ring Junction. Not too busy though. We'll take a look at that as you come in from Cabanas going towards North Airport Road and then through to that junction. A little bit of movement. The Thika Superhighway still continues to be busy, at least just past Survey, heading out towards that junction. You come in from Muthaiga Square and there is a hold up there, but you'll be fine as you get beyond that. Moranga Road will take away some of that as you go towards the Globe Cinema overpass, and we'll see some traffic then going on towards Wangari Maathai. Uhuru Highway is the busiest of it right about now, taking in traffic from Langata Road, Bunyala Road, Lusaka Road, then going and taking in traffic from Haile Selassie. You move on and you get towards Westlands at some point. It'll move, you'll be fine. Let's keep an eye on things and see as we get closer to 9 what it looks like. We'll talk in the meantime on Spice FM KE on X.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature in.
Okay, so here we are at 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. We're having a food loss, food wastage conversation today, the International Day as we recognize food loss and food waste. And to commemorate this and say something needs to be done. As we went to the break, and our guest this hour, Winnie Yegon, Jane Ambuko, Professor, and Dr. Chris Mutungi, we're looking at these issues and we're saying, okay, it was important to say, are there systems in place where these things can be recognized, and shouldn't we be looking at graduated levels of these things that are done at a micro level? I guess we'll start with you, Dr. or Professor.
Yeah. So, like Winnie has already said, and Chris also alluded to it, we have tried interventions on small scale. But there's need to scale this up. Yeah. But even before we scale, we said that you just mentioned, in the past, people used to do things. People used to dry vegetables, fruits, and we sort of lost that. So even before we scale, I still think at household level, there are things that we can do, that we can do actually. Like now we're talking about El Nino is coming, and there's going to be a lot of vegetables, and people, if you have a kitchen garden, you're going to harvest quite. There's going to be plenty, because leafy vegetables like this, all they need is water. So there's going to be that. So what can be done? First of all, even before we scale it for commercial, what can be done? How can we, train or help households to actually just preserve food for their own consumption? Because they're talking about, first of all, household food and nutrition security, okay? Because we're dealing with very small parcels of land, and also even in urban areas, we're talking about kitchen gardens. So at that point, there's something we can do. To actually preserve. If you're having vegetables, can you dry them, like Winnie said? But there's a challenge again. We Kenyans, I think because we are spoiled for choice, we have a lot of options. You can find vegetables and fruits anytime. We haven't even appreciated the value of drying food to use later. So can we start there and let people know that, in fact, this dry tomato or this dried mango is as nutritious as the fresh one. It's just that this is how you're going to use it. This is how to dry it and how to use it later after drying. And then, of course, like Chris said, you see, cottage industries would be born out of these small processes to reduce losses. I can tell you, for example, we, as appreciating the importance of on-farm storage and small-scale processing, we established small-scale aggregation and processing center for farmers as University of Nairobi. So we train them how to add value to fruits and vegetables and sell. But you know what the challenge was? Kenyans don't eat dried produce. So if the challenge is we can actually do that, they can dry the fruits, they can dry the vegetables, for example. But if there are no off-takers, if there's no local market, you see, it's just, I call it expensive waste, because you have spent time and resources to make a product that nobody's going to buy.
Are we looking at the why? Are we looking at the why Kenyans don't eat dry food and dry vegetables, or anybody else for that matter. Winnie talked about a sensitization that needs to happen to make people understand that this is just the same food in another form, and that you can reconstitute it and it comes back to what you're used to.
Yes.
So what is the reason why? Is there a feeling of, it's not the same food?
I think also the taste and preferences. So that is why even as FAO, we are really trying to develop recipes for how to use your dry vegetables, your dry fruits, because some of these things, to be honest, unless you know how to cook it, you might do something crazy in your kitchen. So there's a way to reconstitute dry vegetables, and I'm sure, like you mentioned, even the dry fish, you can't cook dry fish the same way you cook fresh fish. So maybe the community around that used to practice the drying of fish might know how to use the fish, but now we are now a global village. We are now expanding. We are living everywhere, so we need to also share these recipes in addition to sensitization and raising awareness on this issue. Yes,
teacher.
Yes, there is raising awareness, but there's the efforts that you're making. Have you, as you work with these communities, because the responses to the questions we are raising, the people with whom we are working and whom we are trying to influence usually know the answer. They are only required to be asked. For instance, what do I mean? You're talking collaboration. Now, you're talking links. Yes, it starts with those communities. Now, in each of these communities, you will find there are still individuals who know and understand how they preserved foods. Now, how closely do we... Yes, how do we work with these people? You look at the health sector, there's this term we call them midwives, okay? In the health sector, they're called traditional birth attendants. Over time, the health sector have realized that for you to work in communities, you need to work with these people. And you need to also introduce them to modern ways of doing things. The reason is not because of the skill. They have skill, but they have something that you don't have. They're trusted.
Yep. They have influence.
Huge influence. Now, in the same way, there are people in all these communities that you work in who people trust. Now, if you gather the knowledge, and these are the people who actually champion these things that you're talking about in terms of whether you can accept these new forms of food. Essentially, you are trying to implement, it's a behavior change intervention, and for it to actually get the currency of acceptance that is required, the people in those very communities have to accept it, and they'll accept it easier from people they know and already trust than from you, even if the idea is extremely wonderful. Now, everything that we're discussing here, again, if you talk to people who understand these traditional methods, and they're still there, they will walk you through very many interesting things that would provide the solution, but one has to work with them. And they're the people who would probably be your champions, because people who have that sort of knowledge can easily see how whatever it is you are talking about and introducing can work with what they already have. The problem is if they're left out, they will be your greatest headache. Because they are the very people who people will go to ask, and they will tell them that thing doesn't work. In fact, that thing will kill you. And that's the end of that story.
That's true. And I think that is something that is coming out a lot. I don't know whether it is new, but that is something that's coming out a lot. The social-cultural aspects of this bottlenecks that we are trying to solve, because I feel like an important person we have left out are the social scientists. She's from horticulture. He's an expert on food loss. I'm an expert. I come from agriculture economics.
I'm a social scientist.
That is, you see, you now you get the gist.
but that is the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah.
Because
so we need to, back to my linkages and collaboration, bring in the social scientists, because a lot of these things will indeed involve behavior change. First, to accept the solutions we are trying to propose, because like you say, the system is working.
First, understanding it, and understanding it from their point of view, not yours.
Yes.
Is the system working though? Because if the system was actually working, whereby across board there are many things that have happened, that at the very base level there is an understanding that we can actually change our behavior and how we deal with food, and then graduated from there, we can actually make sure that there's lobbying and there's persistence on making sure that some of these things are actually enacted. And then beyond that, there's a systemic change across board, so much more that government policy comes into place to make sure some of these things are actually done. This refrigeration matter that we're talking about for fish, for example, is something that has been discussed, but it's been discussed. Very little in terms of implementation has happened. So if there's the understanding at the base level, and then there's implementation, there's policy, and it's graduated to the top, this 30 to 40% that I clearly have an issue with, then we'll start to reduce. Is it not true?
I mean, I think I like your idea. And City, you mentioned the idea of working with champions. And I totally believe that we got to make use of, local knowledge in the development of our solutions. But having said that, then we really have also to get to understand that we are actually now a global village, and this idea of seeing a solution coming from the local perspective is perhaps good, but it must spread beyond. I mean, you cannot grow if you are processing just to sell to your fellow villagers. We must see markets beyond our village boundaries. You raised the question, or you raised the issue of, did we have, for example, the last 4 years lack of food in the northeastern part of the country, when we really had also plenty in some counties? If we had a system of processing and storing this food, wouldn't we have moved that food to the northern eastern part? Wouldn't there have been a market for even what you think is not really consumed? And so this is, we really have to have a disruptive way of doing things. And I agree totally with you that also we have to engage in policy discussions. We have to begin to ask ourselves what really needs to change. And I think from the academia, some of these things are on paper. I think they are on our fingertips. So what we need to do perhaps is also to accelerate the rate at which we engage with policymakers.
I want to ask you a question, Dr. Are we really a global village?
Well, it depends. But I see it happening, for example, with other spheres, like in technology. Don't you see that? City?
I do.
Why would it not happen with food?
The reason I'm asking for a global village, to internationalize something, it means that the people to whom you are preaching this gospel already know the gospel and understanding at their level. That is why the emphasis on getting people at that very local level to get this thing going. See, it's very difficult to internationalize a concept when somebody is hungry, is broke. They produce something and they're staring at it. All their neighbors produce it, so you can't sell it to anyone. All these things that make for what you call a global village cannot possibly work if at the local level people are unable to just get the basics in place for themselves. They have to start there. There has to be that assurance. If you look at, again, traditional communities, why do you think the concept of barter existed? Because it was understood. These people produce this, these people have this. So these marketplaces that people met in, it was to barter. I have this, you have this. I have geese, you have ducks. I have goats, you have sheep. That sort of thing. So it was understood. Now, if we remove that concept, because in modern day life, we stopped using barter. We had a common rate of exchange and a common medium for exchange. But that concept didn't go anywhere. It just morphed into something we call new now. Now, the traditional societies, we call them traditional because they, tend to be in the rural areas, but they still hold on to some of the norms that we consider to be our cultural heritage. Now, you can't discount it. The global village that you refer to exists and is made vibrant because of diversity. And this concept and this idea and the reality of the traditional community is part of this concept.
Can we look at food loss or food waste outside the context of people in the country going hungry? Because look, it might sound strange, but food loss, food waste, 30-40% wouldn't matter. Okay, hold on. Wouldn't matter if you did not have people within the same country who were hungry. But why it is so alarming and why we're saying something needs to be done about it is that there's food loss and there's food waste that's happening, and you have a significant number of people at any given time who are hungry. And so that is why it matters. And are we saying that there's a direct correlation between this food that's going to waste and these people that are hungry? And can we make up for that loss and have these people fed? Because if we cannot, then we might as well be talking about, I don't know, camels walking on the beach. There has to be a link between the two. And can we make those linkages that if we see a reduction of this food loss or food waste, bring that 30% down to 15%? If we see that, can we then now see that the 22 million people who are at risk of going hungry just 6, 7, 8 months ago, that number reduces to 10 million because now they're being fed on a regular from this loss? Is there a direct link between the two? And if there isn't, then again, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think what you're saying, those are very important statistics that, and actually it's been published or it's been said that the food that we waste globally could actually feed up to 2 billion people. Yes? So there's data there. And I think that brings me to the fact that one of the things that because can imagine if what you just said if we can just present that to the CS of agriculture and say, do you know, if we just reduced the food loss and waste, then we could plug the deficit in our food balance sheet. We don't need, how much food we import to plug the deficit. So you see, we need that evidence for us to actually then move, the policymakers to action. Yeah, because that food that goes to waste can feed people, like you say, feed people who are starving. I mean, it has to pain us when you actually in your house you're throwing some food, and you see those images of people who are, you've seen before. People, those pictures should haunt us. But knowing, like you said, that while that is happening, actually a farmer is feeding his cabbages using his cabbages produced with limited resources to feed the cows because they can't get them to the market, or because the market is flooded, or the milk is being poured. Those things is a paradox. Like in the same country, people are wasting food, are throwing away food, and others are actually, boiling. Those images haunt us. Yeah. So we need to also make a case. To show this evidence, not just for the food. Chris already mentioned the fact that when this food also goes to the dustbin, it creates another problem. Yeah, we are now talking. You had the big discussion on climate change. Everybody's talking about climate change, and we need to plant trees. And do you know food loss and waste also contributes to greenhouse gases?
Yes.
Yes, 10%. Chris can correct me. 10% of the greenhouse gases are from food loss and waste. So, but we need to show that evidence. So, as government is assigning this, I understand there's a lot of money for climate action. How do we get a piece of that to show that
Prof, does that money exist?
I don't know, but I understand it's big.
I've heard figures thrown around and they're huge.
Me too. And everybody is taking their
laying claim to
I'd like to see someone who has received that money because then we can talk to them about it and then we can find out, because those figures are huge.
True.
Okay?
Yeah.
There is even a whole carbon economy where you can trade, and I've even read how it works.
And you can increase and reduce credit.
Yes, I am yet to meet someone who will tell me,
I
have received it, and this is how it works. I'm not saying it doesn't. It is I who has not seen, but I've read about it.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question, even as you're saying what you're saying. There's something Chris mentioned, which gets to the heart of the matter. If he talked about a global village, the journey to being part of that global village, fundamentals that human beings need: food, shelter,
water.
That's just about it. Is it possible for us, with the things we're discussing, to get this into our curriculum so that it's something that is taught? So as you grow up, it's part of what you do. Like this habit we have of you eat something, you throw it out the window. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a habit.
Yep.
It's a mindset. And when, as you correctly put it, you go for a function and there's a buffet, and you find someone has a mountain, and you're thinking, is this guy going to finish his food, really?
Behavior change.
Yes, or have they not been informed that, something, just eat a bit and you can go back. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever the case is, whatever the explanation, some of these things can be inculcated in people at a young age. So as they grow up, they know, it's something they know and understand.
Yeah.
If you go to a country called Israel and look at the way they manage water, they know they're in a desert. They know. But you don't waste water in that place. So even when you're a visitor, in a day you'll have understood. The best thing of leaving the tap running as we do here, you cannot do there what they're taught.
It's true. I think you're really bringing something important to the discussion, which is understanding the people. Because all these things we are talking about, they are people-led. We are not wasting, machines are not wasting the food.
No, it's people.
It is the people. And unless we really understand that bottleneck of how we translate all these things we are saying into action, which is transforming people's mindsets. And if I could go back, allow me, to systems. We keep targeting agriculture. I like what Prof said, build a case for the CS of agriculture. But when you're talking about behavior change, you also need the CS of education. Because all these curriculums need to be in education. You also need the CS of social services. Because all this food distribution is done there. We need the CS of energy to within their plans allocate some money to channel the energy into all these agro-processing facilities we are doing. We need the CS of health, because nutrition is a very key component. All these things we are complaining, because I also had this food waste and this food waste.
Yes.
So are we wasting food internally?
It's in the waste.
Yes. So this conversation is very complex, and if we tailor the message in the right way and ensure everyone is playing their role, because we can't just keep talking without bringing the people that we need to be talking to in the conversation. So that issue of behavior change is something that you have really brought out very well, and it's something that we have also included in the strategy we are developing, how to really bring in social services and the children. Because I think in Swahili, going back to the proverbs, I hope we all understand Swahili, umkunje samaki angali mbichi. You fold a fish when the fish is fresh. Yes, because when you try and fold a fish, once it's dry, it cracks. So where are the children in this conversation? We need to go to the children, because these things are, it's a habit you pick up when you're young and when you're older. If we tell you to not throw away the food. Because in our house, my mother used to tell us, if there was a new meal cooked the next day and you had food left over, you start with your leftover. If you're eating chips today and you have ugali and mboga in the fridge, finish that ugali and mboga before you eat the fish. So for us, it started very early. So these things need to come back. I know most of us, our parents used to tell us when we are younger, when you're throwing away food, you're abusing God, because, food is sacred.
Yes,
food was sacred. But I think also with the growing economy right now, we are facing some challenges. But with the growing economy, as you have more disposable income, you want to buy more. You want to things. Sometimes more. You don't want to start eat broccoli and you don't know what broccoli is.
Wow. Yet another important conversation that we've had this hour. Very necessary for us to talk about this again in the future. Look, we need to come again and we need to open up these conversations a little bit more. Winnie Yegon is a food systems analyst at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Professor Jane Nambuko, professor of horticulture at the University of Nairobi, and Dr. Christopher Mutungi is a senior researcher at the World Resources Institute. Thank you for being here this morning. Let the conversations continue. Asante sana. It's 9 a.m.
Thank you.
Spice up your life.
This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. The Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists submitted their submissions before the National Dialogue Committee at the Bomas of Kenya, co-chaired by Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka and Yala MP Hassan Amar, who was sitting in for National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. Led by Deputy Executive Director Demas Kiprono, ICJ Kenya made submissions on pertinent issues including the implementation of the Article 43 of the Constitution and the cost of living, citing corruption, irresponsible borrowing and wanton cases of government wastage. Kiprono further noted that social and economic rights are a cornerstone of human rights, aiming to create a more just and equitable society where all individuals can live in dignity and reach their full potential. He observed that protecting and promoting these rights were essential for building a more inclusive and prosperous world for everyone. Nairobi County Government has mapped out 463 places at risk of flooding ahead of the onset of the El Nino rains predicted to begin in October. Nairobi County Chief Officer in charge of Disaster Management Bramwell Simiyu listed Kibra, Mathare, Njeru, Ruai among 433 hotspots identified to be prone to flooding. Simiyu said the county government's plan to evacuate residents residing in the areas is in progress to prevent the loss of lives and property in the sub-counties. Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka has voiced concerns over what he terms as the excessive influence of political financiers on the government. Speaking at the multi-sectoral consultative workshop on electoral law reforms agenda in Nakuru, Musyoka highlighted the detrimental impact of individuals who bankrolled the 2022 polls on the effective management of state affairs, as he called for much-needed reforms. The opposition Azimio la Umoja One Kenya co-principal further alleged that the government in its current state is being held hostage by those who funded election campaigns, resulting in a lack of inclusivity in public affairs. Trade Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria now says that he is prepared to align with unconventional forces in order to bolster Kenya's struggling economy. Despite President William Ruto ascending to power on the promise of lowering the cost of living and championing a better future for low-income citizens, Kenya is currently engulfed in a heated discussion regarding the high cost of living. The enactment of the Contentions Finance 2023 bill, the recent hiking of fuel prices by the Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority, and the consequent surge in the prices of essential food commodities have further aggravated the hardships faced by Kenyans. The Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital has completed the first ever cyberknife radiotherapy treatment for cancer patients across sub-Saharan Africa. The Level 6 facility announced the historic breakthrough in a statement saying it paves the way for expanding access to advanced cancer care in Kenya. The success of the first procedure through the cyberknife system, which was commissioned by President William Ruto in May, now puts Kenya on the map as the first nation to offer fully robotic stereotactic radiosurgery and stereotactic body radiation therapy treatments in the region. A Busia-based magistrate has recused herself from a defilement case involving Bunyula West Member of County Assembly Kalbenzo Konya over claims of security threats. The Port Victoria Low Courts magistrate, who initially was handling the case, is said to have transferred it to Busia Principal Magistrate Ednah Nyaloti, saying she did not feel comfortable and was fearing for her life. Magistrate Nyaloti, who also expressed her fears while presiding over the case, said that in a situation where her safety is threatened, she will be forced to ask Chief Justice Martha Koome for directions. The MCA was arraigned and charged on allegations of defiling a 14-year-old girl in Busia town on August 27th. And 2 people died after a road accident past Laisamis area on the Marsabit-Isiolo highway. Confirming the incident, Laisamis Sub-County Deputy County Commissioner Lagat Bosek said 1 more person was injured during the unfortunate incident. The ill-fated private vehicle had a tire burst before it veered off the road, rolling and killing the 2 on the spot. 3 people who were on board during the accident were en route to Nairobi from Moyale. The injured person has been referred to Nanyuki Hospital for further medication. The bodies of the deceased have since been moved to the Laisamis Catholic Hospital mortuary. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers targets to increase adoption of clean energy initiatives among its members in a bid to cut carbon emissions. Speaking during the 9th Clean Energy Conference and Expo, KAM Chief Executive Officer Anthony Mwangi said the manufacturing sector has a duty to sustain livelihoods through job creation whilst maintaining the environment that it operates. This is Newswire. I'm Dennis Aseto. Good morning.
If you go out of this country and come back the same person, then you have a problem. Buy land, 1 million. Put it there for 5 years. What's the purpose?
It'll have increased in value.
No, that's the thing. That's darkness. That's an eclipse. You don't do that.
I hope you don't believe that a hustler is a poor person or that all hustlers are poor. I've seen that conversation.
Who is that? So who's a hustler?
Hustler is a person who is making a living through hard work.
Corruption in Kenya is a political accusation. The people who are actually corrupt are not pointed fingers at.
Kenya is not free. Kenya imeshikwa na mateka. It's under siege.
Have you seen that lodge on Nyeri Road? Very high fence. You can't even
Windows
sleep inside.
up near the ceiling.
Yes. And if you walk there at midnight, you see bats the size of cows.
And when it rains, it doesn't rain on that building.
Yes.
When you're at All Saints and it's raining, it doesn't rain on that building.
The things people will believe.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Okay, right after a few minutes after 9 o'clock, we're looking at traffic. Still, okay, I think it's much better now. We're not looking at a bumper-to-bumper situation anywhere, really. As you come off the Thika Superhighway, I think you're fine now getting into the CBD. We'll see some movement getting on towards Murang'a Road and then coming in to the city at the Globe Cinema overpass. Apart from that, you'll be able to get in and out of where you're going today without an issue right about now. Traffic hour officially will come to an end maybe in half an hour or so. Officially is me, so officially. We'll wait and see what that looks like. Let us know just in case anything does pop off. Talk to us on Spice FM KE on X.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Okoh, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latiff, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's the final hour of Kenya's biggest conversation this morning, and you've been with us through it. And as we get into that, it's an education conversation now, a very important one. And as we get into it, we want to tell you, you know what? If you hadn't had a cuppa this morning, you need a cup of tea to kind of calm things down, isn't it? Assist Tea offers you that great experience in a cup. From the rolling hills of Kurosoi district is Kiptegich Tea Estates, and they're producing some world-class tea. Doesn't matter, what are you thinking? Masala tea, we got you. Lemon tea, it's there. Are you looking for black tea? It's there. Purple tea, hibiscus tea, masala tea, name it, they have it. And so you want to get on down and get yourself a packet of that today and have the experience of a great Assist tea in a cup. Now, when you calm your nerves, you can think about where you will be on the 29th of October 2023. It's the 20th edition of the Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. It's Kenya's largest single-day athletics event. It's the 20th edition, and we take off from Uhuru Gardens on that Sunday morning, and we run for a good cause. What's that good cause? It's the Future Makers program. And what happens is that young people, especially girls and those with disability, have the opportunity to learn, earn, and grow. So register 2,000 shillings, www.nairobimarathon.com to make a change. All right, like I said, it's a conversation about education. Many things happening, balls in the air all over the place. And we're going to ask ourselves some questions. And to help us with that conversation this morning is Janet Okoh, who is an education expert. Janet, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Many thanks.
You are in the hot seat. Mm-hmm. It's a hot topic. Education in the country today, and we want to look at some of those matters, where you come from a position of having been in government and dealt with some of these matters, and now looking at what should be done, or what do these situations tell us about a situation. We've said in this room that education in this country is in a crisis.
It is.
Okay. Well, off the bat, that's where we are, and we'll have that conversation. But let's welcome you properly. Mm-hmm. I've told you can run, with Standard Chartered Nairobi Marathon. I've told you can have a cup of tea with us. CT has a proverb. We welcome everybody with a proverb every morning, and he has proverbs from a country that you may know.
Bring it on.
It's on the East African coast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me not go around in circles. The country is called Kenya. The proverbs for this week, given that they come from the country that we are in, mm-hmm. we have not indicated specifically which part of the country they come from. Okay. We're asking our listeners and our guests in the show to determine whether they can resonate with it,
okay.
and whether they can figure out where this proverb comes from, just on their own, and okay. if maybe the communities they come from okay. have proverbs that are similar to this one.
Okay.
Okay. How easy it is to defeat people who don't kindle the fire for themselves.
Okay.
What do you make of it?
What do you make of it?
How easy is it to defeat people that do not kindle fire for themselves?
Yes.
Yeah. So that I would want to look at it from the perspective of what the issue that we are discussing now is that we are not able to arrest little situations, and when they spill out of hand, the repercussions are meant for people that have been lied to, that a lot of these things are happening because of you, we want to save you, and so on and so forth. Yeah, that's how I make of it.
See, the beauty of Proverbs is that when you are asked your opinion,
everyone is right.
Thank
you. There you go.
That is precisely it, because it is your opinion.
How dare anybody tell you your opinion is wrong?
Exactly, as if they know what your opinion actually is to you.
Ought to have been.
Yes.
Janet, karibu sana once again.
Thank you.
You served, obviously, capacity of education at the county level previously. And you were very robust in some of the things that you had to say and some of the implementation that you wanted to bring about. In the last 1 year, we've seen quite a number of things in an opinion that has been, shared greatly in this room that would then contribute to the notion that education in Kenya is, at crisis levels in terms of the implementation of certain policies to have things done. When the new administration came into place, President William Ruto instituted the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms to try and get some things working. Before that, we had seen the implementation of new curriculum. And there were, of course, teething problems. Many would argue that these teeth have not grown yet and the problems are still teething, right? But here we are today, where now we've seen more introductions. We've talked about a new grading for KCSE. We've said that you can get into university then still with a solid grade because of subjects that you have chosen. Give us an overall of what your feeling is as somebody who's obviously well versed in education matters, as an expert in your own right. What do you feel is the overarching feeling of what is happening with education in Kenya today before we get into the nitty-gritty?
Thank you very much. And one of the things I like saying is that I like giving my perspective. I know the most spoken about feature about myself is having served at the county.
Yes.
But it's also imperative to know that I have served also as a board member of the Global Partnership for Education for 2 years, and I was representing the developing country civil society organizations. I have served in the Africa Early Childhood Network. I've served in the Africa Network Campaign on Education for All. So just to sort of say that when I look at education, I do not just look at it from a very short-term perspective. That's what I would want to say, that is what is happening around us, that we only look at the very short term, because the tragedy is that we have developed a situation where we want to listen to the masses, and then we say, what do they want? And then we do that. And then we cannot do that about sensitive sectors such as education and health. You actually need to look at it from a global perspective. Where are we moving towards? And I would say that a lot of the things that happened, and especially what was a lot more talked about before the current government came into place, it's only taking time to prove that a lot of that was sort of just speaking to the political side of it, because you remember this presidential working party, it replaced another task force that was in place. And one of the biggest criticisms that they went around this country saying is that Parliament was not consulted. But what do? They come in, they do a replica, they do a task force, which is a replica of what was there. It comes up with some recommendations. Shying away, I would want to give you the task force report of the previous curriculum reforms, task force report.
Yes.
And then you look at the report of the Presidential Working Party. I will dare you to identify any differences, technical differences at least. But what you can pull out are political differences that all these reforms were pushing so hard for the TSC to be a certain way. And then there were complaints from teachers. So what do we do as Kenya Kwanza government? For us to be seen as if we are reformists, we are going to do that which pleases the masses. But what happens to us in the long haul, And then we went around this country. What does going around this country means? So that you're soliciting for views, you want to convince us that going around this country means putting 1,000 people in a hall to talk about a technical issue. From where I sit, and especially as an expert, clearly you cannot pick anything technical. Tell me that you're going there to popularize, but you cannot pick anything from a hall of 3,000 people and expect that you are really going to discuss curriculum from there. And I say that sometimes it is good to be seen as if you are addressing the concerns of the masses. But I know from where I sit, and especially as a leader, there are some decisions that must be made that are unpopular, because you cannot tell me now everything I know about education and where we want to go. Because this which has happened now, and especially let's talk about what Kenyans can relate to, that we have now said that instead of taking the entire 5 subjects, to determine, you aggregate grade at KCSE level, we are now just going to pick 2. What does that do? It creates a pseudo feeling like yes, because those learners that are now going to sit for their exams, people will go around this country saying that, look, we have made more people enter the university.
Yes.
But from where I sit and from where you sit, you know that university is not free. Nobody should be lied to that children in this country are not accessing universities because they have not made it. They have not made the grade.
Janet, what
children are not accessing university because university is so expensive. We have just seen fee structures of universities being flashed here. It's 350,000. And the least that you can do even for like the social sciences courses is I've seen it's about 270,000 Kenya shillings. We know very well it is very populist of a government to say that we are going to fund university education 100%. It is even globally, it is not accepted because we have not even finished funding basic education for us now to extend to tertiary education and pretend that we can actually be able to fund a university education fully. And the conversation is about how have we enabled sciences to be popular? You cannot make recommendations based on people are not performing well in sciences and therefore they are not able to make it to the universities. But how can they make it in sciences when there are no laboratories in our schools? How? You didn't even give that child opportunities to even explore whether they are good in sciences or they are not, because they do not have teachers, they do not have facilities. So how then do you tell them that instead of struggling so much with sciences and physics, you can actually do CRE, you can actually do history, and when you get A's in those, then you can qualify that it's a lie in the long run. And we are shortchanging our children, and we really need to look at each other and say, what for? What are we thinking? What are we thinking about our country? For how long can propaganda, for how long can PR go? How long can it take us? Do you want to tell us that those people that sat down and thought about these sciences and thought about, I know that there's a conversation I like about this whole grading thing. I like the conversation that there are children that are not gifted very well in physics and chemistry. Even if you'd give them the entire facilities, maybe they wouldn't make it.
But there's a place where they are strong.
Yes, there's a place where they're strong. For that purpose of the conversation, I agree that we do not need to subject everybody to that kind of grading. But I wouldn't want us to lose the bigger picture, that now government is just likely to just relax and say, because there's no that pressure. Anyway, if you don't have a science lab, I mean, you can read CRE, you can read history. In any case, you will go to the university anyway. And for me, I think that is the biggest conversation, because after all is said and done, it is nobody's business to fund education. It remains the state business. There are conversations here and there saying the way parents should take part in it, the way parents say, yes, they could take part in it. But remember, I did not write the constitution. We wrote our constitution that gives every child a right to free and compulsory basic education. And basic education, for all intents and purposes, means 0 to 18 years. So as long as that child is within the basic education framework, they are entitled to free and compulsory education. Let us not make political decisions to just cover for the inefficiencies of our government. And then imagine a child that is somewhere in the village that really has a dream about being a scientist. Mm-hmm. And then they go to some secondary school there, God-forsaken, doesn't have a laboratory. They only see it when it is time for mocks, when they're now hired, some apparatus and some reagents are hired. Mm-hmm. So what are we doing about the dream, of that child? And it is true, and I would want somebody from government to confirm for me this, that even in the big public secondary schools, government is not sending money that is supposed to equip the laboratories. For those schools that even have laboratories, money for buying reagents is not coming. For last term, the only funding that went to public schools is 30%.
Indeed,
is 30%. So really, it's about government running away, and we will come back to still this lie that when government cannot fully commit to something, they look for a shortcut out of it. And that is the same shortcut they have found in funding higher education, where now government runs away from funding higher education and throws the entire burden to the parents and only take conveniently a very small percentage. They call them the needy. And we do not care to find out the accountability about identifying that needy. But we have identified that needy. And today, even a primary school teacher who takes home a net of about, give or take, 40,000 is not classified as a needy person, and they're expected to fund 370,000 in fees for their university child. That is where we are.
These issues bleed into each other, and then it forms a whole when we talk about education as a whole. But there are very many issues. So let's look at some of them under a magnifying glass, which you've brought out today. One of the issues is the reforms having been suggested, I believe it's 14, 15 points now by the Presidential Working Party, about things that are supposed to happen across board. And this is from pre-primary school all the way to university education. And there are many issues that come in here, funding, grading, etc., etc. What are you saying here? That the needs truly of education, of the stakeholders, the most important stakeholders in my opinion being the learners, and the other stakeholders, parents, teachers, etc., going to the ministry level, that the needs of the stakeholders have actually not been taken into consideration because a government which is instituting these policies is being populist? Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Because we do not have a need such as not knowing what needs to be done in education in Kenya. For the records, we have over 13 reports unimplemented for working parties. They call them presidential working parties, call them task forces, call them Jopokazi. We baptize them everything. So we are not where we are supposed to be for not knowing where we should be. But we are not where we should be in the education sector for lack of government commitment to genuinely fund education. When you listen to the current government walking around saying that we have increased funding, and I ask, where have you increased this funding? Can you show me? Like, I'm a 2-year-old. Show me where. Because from where I sit, what a child receives in terms of capitation has not increased by a cent. So when you increase it, I mean, where is this money? We really, I'm really offended by leaders just throwing statements because citizens have no fora to clarify or to ask what exactly. You told us that you have increased funding for this and this, but the capitation grant has remained the same. A child in any public primary school in this country is receiving 1,248 shillings, which never comes on time and which never comes fully. Like, for example, for the last year that we are talking about, the schools have received barely 80%. Nobody gives an accountability of the balance of last year of 20%.
What is going to happen?
What is going to happen to it? Because we have now moved to a brand new year. Where is that 20%? Why did didn't you send it? How did you expect us to manage? Because we have vote heads that depend on that capitation grant. So then you have someone walking around the country saying the way they have increased funding. For what? For where? Where is the money?
1,200 capitation, is it per term, per year?
Per year. That's an amount that goes per year.
And what is it intended for? What are you supposed to do with this 1,200?
The 1,248 thereabouts, the teachers are served with vote heads that are generated from the Ministry of Education. It should pay for electricity. You should know that for every child, the government sends 6 shillings per year to pay for electricity and water. It's as scandalous as it looks. So there are vote heads for teaching and learning materials and so on and so to just cater all the way to 1,200.
So everything in essence that the student would need is catered for by this 1,200
per term.
As if
per year.
Per year.
As if it is not enough. The ministry still does not send the entire 1,200. It withholds. No. It first withholds some for activities and so on and so forth, so that the money that hits the school, it's give or take 1,000 and something. That's the money that the teacher expects. The money does not come at once. It is divided into 3 tranches.
Yes.
And so that's where
That is why every time school is starting, the teachers are saying, we are waiting for capitation.
Yes.
And then the ministry says, by next week, Tuesday, we will have sent you money. And then even when it is sent, it is not even the whole remaining of the...
And there is no explanation. My problem is, you may not have all of it, but can you just do an explanation? Because this is our money. We have a very bad culture of non-accountability. When you send little money, what do you expect that teacher to do? You don't even accompany it with saying, we are going to send it in 2 weeks. We are sort of running this country carelessly.
But is this something new? Is this what you're saying is happening now? Is it the first time it has happened in our history, or has it happened before?
It has been happening that the ministry has not been sending money in good time.
Yes.
Why we are raising it and flagging it very vigorously now is to counter a narrative that is a lie, that the government has increased funding to education. We want to be shown where. Where is this money? So that we just can't be on lies. We just can't be on propaganda. And there are sectors that I love so much, because you cannot run education on a lie. It will boomerang on you. When you drive down, like when I was coming, I would tell you, like the last week, every junior secondary school in Nairobi sent the children home. Why? Because there is no money.
There is no money.
There is no money. So as you're busy telling us that you have increased the money to education, life does not lie. Children are on the road. Why are they on the road?
Let me ask this question, since we are on capitation. How much then is given for secondary schools?
22,000 and some hundreds.
Yes.
Which is even...
is that boarding or day?
Day. Every child.
Secondary school,
every child.
Whether you're in a day school, whether in a boarding school, is 22,000.
22,000
per year.
Yeah, the thinking of government, which I have always agreed with, because in my view, all of us should walk towards having day school, at the end of the day, because it is cheaper on the parents, because it is not necessary to say that there is any child that needs to sleep in school for them to learn. Learning ends at about 5. So please go home, so it will help us really sort out so many issues, because the current teacher is so much preoccupied with non-teaching roles, like maintaining 1,000 children in the dorm, and we are now even having bed bugs. We are now having, there's just so many non-learning issues that have now become the core issues that we are discussing in our sector. But if we just taught and allowed every child to go and stay with your parents, we would save ourselves a lot of resources, because when government sends 22,000 to every school, to every child for the day school, now you can see the difference, because the fee structures flying around will tell you that secondary school costs, like if you're taking a child to Alliance, per term, you will part with give or take 40,000 per term. So the difference really goes towards sleeping, you in the weekend around. So that cost is just too much for parents. And when government said that for day scholars, every child that is enrolled in a public secondary school, government sends in 22,000 and some hundreds. And it follows the same trend that we have discussed with the primary school capitation grant, that it doesn't come on time. A lot of it is withheld at the ministry level. At the end of the year, you will see that government withheld 20% of that amount with no explanation as to why they withheld, with no explanation as to where the money went to or when it will be sent, with no conversation.
I have to ask Janet, because we're going to go to a break in a minute, but when asked, if ever asked, where is the answer in terms of where the rest of this money goes? Because we do know that, like, for example, October 25th, 26th, the year is over.
Sure.
Right? And the chances of this remaining money coming to schools is very slim.
Yeah.
So if and when asked, where do they say this money goes? Because come January, we'll be back to the same cycle again in terms of teachers and heads saying we are waiting for capitation to start the term in January.
That conversation never happens because who will ask? The head teachers, of course, cannot ask their bosses that question. So everybody is just forced to fit in a shoe, however pinching it is.
Okay, it's necessary for us to take a break at this point. We come back and continue with this conversation looking at, education at crisis levels in Kenya, and looking at resolutions that have been made. Will those resolutions work? Some of them looking at grading from KCSE going to university, looking at capitation and how it doesn't come. If it does, it doesn't come in full. Janet Okoh, an education expert, is our guest this hour. And on that note, we'll take a break and look at more of this conversation when we come back.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Thank you very much, Eric, and it's good to be at the Situation Room.
Always a pleasure coming here. This is the most challenging interview panel in Kenya. You guys are very well informed, and as you can see, Charles today very philosophical.
To be poor in this country is the greatest sin you can commit, not just from a legal perspective, but from life generally. It is very, very skewed.
We've just heard on the floor of parliament, just most recently, a leader within the ODM saying that sisi ni ng'ombe is a baba.
Yeah.
Which means that you are willing to be milked dry.
You cannot force me to believe. I'll give way. If it's land that I'm told to return to you, I will. Okay? Because the court has said so. But I'll continue saying, watu wamenirusha. That's all that I'm doing.
The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Join the Employee of the Year Awards year that seeks to fit organizations which put people at the core of their businesses and have implemented policies, systems, and processes that create and sustain enterprise competitiveness, resilient productivity improvement alongside industrial peace and harmony. The awards creates a platform for identifying, recognizing, and promoting excellence in corporate performance, people management, and labor relations practices amongst employers in Kenya. If you have all this, then you are the one to be feted. The awards will take place on 6th of October at Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi from 6 p.m. For more information, check the Federation's website at www.fkekenya.org. Air Awards, supported by Safaricom, GIZ, ILO, BAT, NCBA, and NITA.
Oh, finally! It's my Standard Courier delivery.
At Standard Courier, we know that your time is valuable. That's why we guarantee swift and efficient deliveries to your doorstep every time. Give us a call on 0793 599 684 or schedule your next delivery by visiting our website www.standardmedia.co.ke/courier. Trust Standard Courier service for all your courier needs. We deliver with pride.
Some very nice, mature music.
It really took me back to my days, and I can just feel young again and enjoy the vibes.
Spice.
I'm a big listener of Spice FM.
You play the best music.
This is 94.4 Spice FM.
Some very nice, mature music.
It really took me back to my days, and I can just feel young again and enjoy the vibes.
Spice.
I'm a big listener of Spice FM.
You play the best music.
This is 94.4 Spice FM.
25 minutes to 9 o'clock, and the conversation continues this morning. Janet Okoh is our guest at this hour, and we are looking at education in crisis. And it sounds sensational in terms of using that, but essentially that's what we're looking at, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. Welcome to our audiences on KTN News this morning. And as we continue with that, CTS are going to break. Something you wanted to bring up?
Well, yes. You see, when you talk about there having been 13 reports on education, and there have been really, we have changed from the time of independence. We've changed our education system in very many ways, very many times. Most people don't even know that there was an exam that people had in Standard 4, then there was one in Standard 7, then there was one in Form 2 called Kenya Junior before you actually went to Form 4, then there was one in Form 6, okay? Then the 844 system came in, and the Form 6 aspect of the study went out. Now we have the CBC. On paper, our educational plans usually tend to read very well, and they are very promising. And you figure if this thing were to be operationalized, what a wonderful thing it would be, and what beautiful learning opportunities the students would have. What exactly, now since we're in the current and we are grappling with this CBC, what exactly is the CBC supposed to achieve? In your opinion, of course.
Yeah, and I want to begin from where you left, that there are several reforms that have been made, and all that experts really sat down and had very good thoughts about it and put on paper. You read them and you think, wow, yeah, this is where we should take the education sector, and this is what we really want for our children. But our problem has always been money. I've said that we really don't have problems with where we should go. We have so many ideas, but our problem is money. And if you think about even the 844, it was a very good idea, and all these ideas you see coming from CBC, a lot of them are in bits and pieces from the previous administrations and from the previous curriculums that we have had. But even in 844, we moved with implement before we fully funded. That's why you had art and craft, and no school had a workshop. No school had a hammer or nails. And the teacher is supposed to show you how to make a stool. So what happened? We would buy stools. My father bought for me a stool to take for examination because he does also not know how to make it, and I'm here struggling with it, and there's a carpenter there who is selling it at 150 shillings. So, and even the teacher that we are taking this tool to really does not have the know-how because they were not even trained. They were not. So that is the problem. And even in CBC, why I really thought that this administration, when they went around criticizing CBC and AA and AA, I thought that when they came in,
they will scrap it.
They will scrap it. That's what everybody expected. But they did not scrap it. Meaning what? Meaning, deep down, and I told people that when the current president was assistant minister for higher education, either assistant minister or something like that.
There was a time he was an assistant minister.
Was assistant minister.
Yes, he was.
I remember vividly during the time when the Vision 2030 was being written, and there were so many conversations about Vision 2030. I remember I was a CEO of an NGO that actually funded a breakfast meeting where he himself opened, and part of that was the reforms, the curriculum reforms. And I remember vividly him saying that we really need to reform. We really need. So deep down, even when I saw him moving around this country, I knew this guy deep down knows that we actually need to reform our curriculum. So when he came in, and he's now president, and technically everything about CBC is okay. The only thing that is not okay about CBC is the way we have funded our education system. And that is why, unashamedly, they maintained CBC, but still continued on the path. I say unashamedly because there is no apology that has been done. Remember all the harm that was done in terms of saying, this is a bad curriculum. What do you think that did to the parents that had children that don't have an option. You know, there's a section of Kenyans that are so much unmoved by what is happening in CBC because they can take their children to international schools. But there are people in this country that don't have a choice.
Right.
They just have to take their children there. And you're here telling them that it is bad, it is you demonize. And then you don't come back and tell them, no. This is, you know, it's a good system. That is the accountability that I am talking about. And I'm saying CBC is very good because, and I see this move, you know, this move to sort of reform the grading of KCSE is going towards saying and recognizing that all children are gifted differently.
Sure.
You cannot expect the children that are not gifted in their cognitive ability to succeed in an examination that only relies on cognitive testing. You really cannot do that. And so, for me, if CBC is funded, and I underline the word if CBC is funded, it's a great move that will take the children of this country to a different whole level. You see, even when the Constitution says that right now, I think everybody needs a degree to either vie to be governor.
Yes, or whatever. Yeah.
Or whatever. So think about a child that for them to pass through our system and to be graduate, they have to pass chemistry, they have to pass maths, and clearly they cannot. So what exactly are you telling those people? So for me, CBC opens doors for every learner by exploiting every learner's potential. But I have to put a caveat that if we do not fund education to the level that it should be funded, then we will still be back, and in 2-3 years we will be saying we need to reform, and even if we reformed 1,000 times and we do not fund education the way it is supposed to be funded. Someone says that we spend so much on education. Fair enough. We do spend so much on education, but in terms of saying that we have met the international threshold that says that we should spend 24% of our national budget towards education, but are those our needs? What are we actually saying that? Because I see so many other projects. And I want to give you one example. I want to give you one example of what is happening, for example, in Nairobi. When we come in and say that we have me as a person, as a politician, I have a pet project.
Yes.
And that pet project takes more budget of the county, for example, than any other project that has been there. You know, we really have to remain within discipline levels, because when you come in as a governor, that is not your money. You know, that is not your money. And we must insist on discipline. Can you spend on functions? Can you spend money on functions? And for example, if you think that Nairobi County is going to be spending 1.7 billion shillings on school feeding program, notwithstanding that particular county of Nairobi has been given a function, a very small function in the education sector called early childhood education, ECD. If you think that Nairobi County government is only holding 11.2% of children of ECD going age, because that is the only capacity that government schools have, and then you don't want to think that your role should even be to expanding this to 100%. You abandon that completely and you say, I have a personal project that I want to do. I want to feed children. Which children are you feeding? Children who are in non-formal schools. What are you saying about them? Do you even stop to think that every parent is a taxpayer? That Mama Mboga who is cutting sukuma wiki there, your kanjos were there and they collected money from her, and then you're telling her that you want to feed children who are already in public schools, which are 196 only in this Nairobi County. You cannot even think that your role is to expand from 196 to something like 200 so that you can bring more children on board. We are joking as a country, and we need to really call out our leaders without these emotions of saying our serikali yetu, serikali yetu. Can we stop all that?
On average, how many students are there in these classes that we're talking about in these public schools, say in Nairobi?
And I know these are facts. School by school,
yes,
it is varying, but the average, and especially if you go to schools in the eastern region, it is a different picture when you talk about the schools in the CBD, because several dynamics have changed, including people moving from those settlements, and now because everything in the CBD has expanded. But if you go to the traditional Eastlands areas, the average class has got 100 children. I know of a school, 100 children in one classroom.
Is that primary or secondary?
Primary school.
100.
There is the Wabu Primary School. in fact, all schools in Embakasi West, for example, all public primary schools, 110, 130, 120 in one classroom. Then you come...
Have the classrooms been expanded?
No. You cannot expand a classroom beyond what it is. But what is annoying is the illusion that when we go to the public, we are saying that this feeding program will bring more children to school. To where? To sit where? You're bringing them to sit where? Why can't we have integrity for once? I mean, and you know when we passed this, and I saw it is very tragic seeing our deputy president abroad saying the way this program in Nairobi will bring more children to school. I felt very unfortunate about the situation. There is no feeding program that will bring any more children to school, and this is why the teachers don't have space. They don't have space for them. There are so many children of Nairobi that are on waiting lists.
So the fundamental issues that we're looking at here, if we look at certain things, the curriculum, for example, one, we are saying that there's nothing wrong with this curriculum, but if you're not going to fund it and build the necessary capacity to have it run, that is where our problem is. And yes, the argument has come out, Janet, that, education gets the lion's share of the budget, doesn't it? But then the question keeps coming in that where does the money go? Yes. If you're not going to fund fundamental curriculum development, if you're not going to fund expansion of schools, we keep asking the question here, for example, when is the last time you've seen schools being built in communities?
Never.
Public
we
schools.
Hear of health facilities being
built.
Yes, we hear of them.
And we're saying that the bulk of the population right now is in school. That's the truth. That the higher percentage of Kenya's population today is of school-going age.
Can I expose to you something tragic? Nairobi County has 85 wards. 85 in total. And wards are the county government administrative unit. There are 10 wards, 10 in this county of Nairobi that do not have one single public primary school. 10 that do not have one public primary school. That is the seriousness of all this. And when you ask yourself, where are those children going to?
The question I'm thinking of is, as you're talking about, I'm thinking of CDF. A lot of this CDF money tends to go to schools. So that word is in a constituency. So what exactly does that MP do? Do you hear the members of parliament pitching a fit or arguing? Or do you hear county assembly members bringing these issues to the fore and saying, look, my ward has no schools?
You know the tragedy, and I know that members of parliament and CDF has done tremendous growth.
Yes.
And if you want to be honest, the Ministry of Education sort of stopped completely putting up new infrastructure in terms of public schools, and they left conveniently that burden to the members of parliament. But the accountabilities
or to private investors.
Or to private investors, which is really tragic because that amounts to privatization of education. And when it comes to the members of parliament, where do they account, to us? When we are holding people to account, we are not holding members of parliament to account for not developing new schools, because it is not them that are custodians of data. And even when we are holding our government to account, we do not consider indicators like, for example, how many more children have you brought back to the publicly funded education? That is never our conversation. We are dwelling on tokenism. Tokenism. I gave checks of 3,000 shillings in bursaries. It's not okay. It's really not okay, and we cannot. And I said this, that as Nairobians, we one day made a decision to elect a governor, and I saw, because I served in that administration, their entire understanding of health and how health should be run in this country is going to China, bringing containers of diapers and plastic karais, packing it at Pumwani, so that every mother that delivers is given a bag of diapers in a plastic karai, and they go home. And they would sing and dance around the lorry. But on their left hand, they are holding a prescription to go and buy drugs, because that hospital does not have drugs. Before you enter, your spouse would be told to come with jik and to come with cotton wool, because it is not there. That is where we have generated into. Look at us cheering that somebody is going to give us food at 5 shillings. You are not even thinking that for you to get admitted to that public primary school, you must part with 10,000 shillings. Why? Because there is no desk. Because there is no this, there is no that. So between 5 shillings, where 1.7 billion shillings went to, and between telling that governor, no, food we can feed ourselves. But can you equip our classrooms? Can you build us another block so that those children that are at home, because they cannot afford these monies that are being asked in this school to support things that government cannot support, can be able to come here? So that those children that are attending non-formal schools and their parents are working so hard to get the fees in the midst of this. Why aren't we having these conversations? Because we have cheapened ourselves so much, and we have let our country go to people that are making decisions that are for that day. As long as I get clapped for, as long as I get danced for, as long as my name is trending because I did as a tokenist thing, it is not okay. And we cannot make any progress as a country if that is how we want to proceed.
Can I ask you, are we saying that we don't need school feeding programs?
I have worked in the county government of Nairobi, and I know that you don't do things because people need them. Okay. You do things because you are guided by the CIDP. There's a plan. I have gone through the entire CIDP plan. I have not seen any indication that Kenyans told the government that we are not able to feed our children. So this particular intervention is what we need for now.
Through the avenue of public participation.
Through the avenue of public participation. Through even the processes of county planning, through the CIDP. But everybody said, we do not have enough classes. We do not have enough schools. We do not have enough desks in our schools. We do not have enough teachers.
We do not have labs.
But you know what? Our politicians do not like the hard stuff. They do not like doing the hard stuff. They like the cheap things. Like the example I have given you about buying diapers, and people will go home saying, "Nilipewa diapers," and you ask, for how long are those diapers going to serve you? You know, and really, I know that people, there is a conversation that is there that for me, I would really want to caution us that it is not that all of us can delegate our thinking. We cannot unknow what we know. And I don't want those people that know the right thing to shy away because you're being told that you are out of touch with Mwananchi. That conversation has to die. That conversation has to die. We must insist on the path of doing things right, whether popular or unpopular. The path for doing things right, we must insist on it.
Let me ask this question again. The reason why I asked about the feeding program is because I know of many day secondary schools, who have feeding programs. Okay? Children come to school. Oh yes, you have something to say.
Yeah,
You've seen
I know. And that's why I'm saying, can we insist on the right way of doing things? I have fought with that feeding program in secondary schools. Because why?
Yes. Why?
If the government says that schooling is free, let us also not take the parental responsibility away from parents and monetize parental responsibility, because that is what has happened. That instead of you carrying food from home, because we are here, and that is what we did. That's what happened to us. We carried food from home, and we went with it from school. This obsession with collecting 100 shillings from you so that we can centrally make food so that then we will serve you. I mean, what is it? The idea here is every child having lunch. Can we stop monetizing it? I have met children that have been sent home because they did not have the lunch. They have not contributed to the lunch fund. So it beats the policy of government of free schooling at the end of the day.
What about, I know of, let me talk of a school because I happen to have been the chair of the board of management in the village. There was a feeding program. Parents did not have to contribute to that program. There are places, more so in big cities like Nairobi, where the poverty levels are beyond imagination.
Correct.
So, do I hear you to be saying the feeding program in and of itself is not a bad thing, but the way we've gone about it is what is wrong?
There's no contention that there are families in this city that cannot afford so many things, including what we would consider a decent meal. But they eat. Whatever it is that they eat, they do eat. But I want us to stop emotionalizing things. That if you really emotionalize that a child cannot afford rice and beans Whatever they ate at home, it's a situation. But that particular child can also not afford the 3,000 shillings that are being asked to buy a desk in classroom. So if it were you, what could you afford them? What we are insisting is, can the government remain in fidelity? The Constitution has given you a responsibility of ensuring free and compulsory basic education to every child. Coming from where? The background was that poverty. Because we did a research in this country, and even globally, levies are the biggest barrier towards children accessing education. It was never food. It has never been food. And I have asked Sakaja, can you show me the data that you're working with to tell you that so many children are out of school in Nairobi because they cannot afford food? For you to put school feeding program as the highest spender of the county budget, can you imagine? Our health budget is 1.1 billion. Health. And there is nobody else in this world that is going to come and do health for us apart from the county government. But we give it 1.1 billion, but you give school feeding 1.7 billion. Are we serious as a nation? Are we serious? Our dispensaries are going to serve 5 million people. 1.7 billion is food for 250,000 children. Are we serious? That is, and that's why I've said, on paper, there is so much money looking like it is going to Wananchi, but it is going to the wrong things. And that is why I'm saying we need to have discipline in the way that we spend. And we need to cut the appetite of politicians for doing the populist things, because we need to know they're doing those populist things with our money and at the expense of other more important things that could have made our lives better.
On a priority list today, because we're coming from the conversation that clearly there's a problem across board, it would be for school feeding program here. We're looking at provision of books, we're looking at capitation, we're looking at hiring of teachers. I mean, look, we could talk about this for days, but let's say that 1.7 billion, let's just use Nairobi as an example. If it was to go somewhere else, what would be on the priority list? Even as our minutes tick down now, what would be on the priority list that would now give education the face that, we have a handle on things?
1.7 billion. Even if you wanted to spend 100 million shillings on putting up a fully fledged learning institution, because now 100 million will not be a school. It will be a learning institution that has got a complex all the way from ECD to primary to secondary school. It can put up 17 institutions. And lo and behold, we have 17 constituencies in Nairobi. So every constituency can have a huge complex where they can commute, and day schooling can be. So what I'm saying is we have all the resources we need to implement the big ideas and the good ideas that we have always had. But what have we done? We have let politicians run away with it, run away with our money to do things for their own political gratification, that for that moment, this is my project. Why is it your project? This is our money. We painstakingly contribute. Have you seen the way Kanjos harass mamambogas on the streets for them to give that 30 shillings? Where do you even get the strength to wave it as my pet project? It is lack of integrity, and we need to call out that for our politicians. It is not your money, it is our money. And you should have the humility to listen to citizens when they tell you, yes, feeding program is a good thing, but we do not think that is the priority that we needed. And even thinking broadly, you saw on the governor's Twitter handle him saying that there's some people caucusing somewhere with the aim of harming our children. And I looked at that tweet and I said, oh God, we can never ever get this low. Are you talking about people thinking about poisoning food for mass production of our children? Because you know that citizens don't have a situation where they will ask you, hey boss, even when you make such a serious allegation, you have no integrity whatsoever to think about that. We do not have a choice, because the schools where we take our children have been given a directive by government that no, we cannot continue with our own small program, because you must, everybody has been bulldozed to it, and you're here making all these allegations about it. We have no choice.
Janet? Obviously, like I said, conversations that must continue. We want to thank you for being here this morning and looking forward to having this conversation again, rather a continuation of the same in terms of what we can do to lift education out of its crisis. Folks, thanks for being here on Kenya's Biggest Conversation this morning. We'll do it again tomorrow at 6 a.m. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Keep it Spice FM. It's 10 a.m.
Spice up your life